Hello everyone, Alex here from warnoffkeys.com, and in this video I'm going to show you how you can use per server settings so you can do things such as custom command prefixes per server that the server owners can configure when using your bot, or such as a welcome message or some type of channel specific setting that will allow you to remember what channel ID goes to what server. Now, it is important that you follow the previous video, which will be in the video description and at the top right of your screen right now. And this is going to show you how to set up a local Mongo server. So the first thing I'm going to do to get that out of the way is I'm actually going to go and start up that server. So to do that, you can open a folder and go to your C drive, and you want to go to Program Files, and then MongoDB, server, the version, and then bin, and you want to copy this path right here. If you follow the previous video, you should know exactly how to get to this. We can copy this and close this, and then I'm going to open up a new console here, and I'm going to navigate to that using the cd command. I can then run ls, and we see a bunch of different .exe files in here. To actually run our server, we can simply say mongod.exe. And now we see a bunch of information actually displayed on the screen. We don't have to worry about any of it. This is essentially just saying that everything is working correctly. So we can go back to our bot and we can know that our Mongo server is actually set up. So now I highly suggest you download a software called MongoDB Compass. Depending on how you installed MongoDB, this might actually already be installed on your system if you do a search for it. And opening it, you might see a page like this. We can now try and actually connect to our server. We can click on a new connection right here. And we can actually type in this. We can say MongoDB : //localhost : 27017, which is the default port. And so this will allow us to connect to our Mongo server. We can then click on connect. We get sent to a page like this. We'll come back to this later. For now, I just want to make sure that we're actually logged in. So we can minimize this and go back to our code. And now we can actually start writing some code. Within this tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can create a welcome channel system that is going to work between multiple different servers. Like I've previously mentioned, it is important that you understand that this same exact concept can apply to every single per server setting you might have, such as a custom command prefix or anything else like that. So if I open up the welcome file, we have a very blank function here, but we're actually going to implement some features, but we want to actually run this function. So we're going to import it. So constant welcome equals require welcome. And then we're simply going to call that passing in our client. We can now save our main file, we can close it, and all our functionality will be in here for now. So in the previous video, I created a Mongo file, which is going to allow us to connect to our Mongo server. We can actually import that. So constant Mongo equals require Mongo. And the first thing we want is we want to create a command. So this command will be !setWelcome and then some message. And we want to make sure that only administrators can run this command and that they do require a message. So to do this, we can import this very basic command handler, which will be in the video description. If you've already cloned the project, you already have access to it. We can then create a command by passing in the client. We are going to say setWelcome as the name, and then we get a callback, which has one argument, and that is the message. So we can get some information from the message. So constant member equals message. This will destructure the member property into its own variable. And the first thing we want to do here is make sure that the member has administrator permissions. So we could say if not member.has permissions, we can pass in administrator. Then we want to send a message to the channel, and the message object here does have a channel property, so we can destructure that as well. We can say channel.send, you do not have permission to run this command, and then we can return from this if statement right here. So the next step is to actually destructure the content property from the message object, and this is going to give us access to the entire text. So at the moment, that will include the command as well as the actual welcome message, but we'll fix that in a few moments. Now we want to actually save this to our database. Before we do that, we have to tell MongoDB how our database will be structured. Now this is specifically a part of Mongoose and one of the advantages to using Mongoose. Normally in Mongo, you don't have to do this, but we have to create something called a schema. So I'm going to make a new folder called schemas. This folder will hold all the schemas that we have, and this is basically just a template or a blueprint for how our data will be structured. We can then make a new file called welcomeschema.js, and we need to import Mongoose. So constant Mongoose equals require Mongoose. We can then create a new constant called welcome schema, and set this equal to mongoose.schema. Keep in mind the S is capital here. Now inside we have one object, And this is going to be the actual template or blueprint that I mentioned. Now, the first thing we want to do is we want to specify something called a primary key. This will be a unique identifier for this actual object, and this cannot be shared with other things. So a good example of a primary key will actually be the guild ID. So in MongoDB, how we specify a primary key is with _ID. And then we have to specify a type. In this case, it will be string. The next thing can be the channel ID, and this will be a string as well. And then afterwards, we can have the actual text, which will be a string. Now, in this specific use case, we want none of these to be optional, and we want all of them to be required. To do that, we can pass in an object. The type can be string, and required can be true. Now, instead of copying and pasting this 3 times, I can actually cut this out of this object, and I can create a variable, let's say rec string for required string, and I can paste it right here. I can then say rec string instead of string here, here, and here, and now all 3 of these properties will share these values, so Mongoose knows that they are a string type and that they are required, and if we pass in a number or something else like a boolean, or if we just don't use these whenever we're saving our document, it'll actually throw an error and tell us, hey, the channel ID is required. So this is useful to make sure we don't actually have bugs. The last step in this file is to actually export this. So module.exports, and we're going to say mongoose.model and pass in 2 parameters. The first one will be the actual collection name or the table name. In this case, we'll just say welcome-channels. The second one is going to be the actual schema, so welcome schema. We can now save this, we can close this file. Going back into our welcome file, we can actually import that. So constant welcome schema equals require from the schemas folder, welcome schema. So now that we have that, we can actually create a Mongo connection and then actually save this to our database. So to do that, we can say await mongo.then, and this will give us a callback with Mongoose. Now we're using await here, so make sure that this function that has the message property is going to be asynchronous. Now we can use a try finally to ensure that our Mongo connection is closed. So mongoose.connection.close. Now inside of here is where we want to actually save our document. So we can say new welcome schema and then pass in an object, and this will be the actual information that we defined in our schema here. So we need an _ID, a channel ID, and a text. So _ID will be our guild ID. However, we don't have access to that, so we can actually destructure that because it is a property of the message object. We can now say guild.id. We then want the channel ID, so channel ID will be channel.id. And then we want the actual text, which will be content. Afterwards, we can run .save and save this. Now we can run node index.js to start our bots. Going into Discord, we can run !setWelcome testing. And we get this error here saying topology is closed. How we fix that is we simply just say await. And because we added this here, this function has to be asynchronous. So saving that and restarting our bot, it should work now. So setWelcome testing. And then we see no errors. Going into MongoDB with the Compass program that I mentioned, you can now refresh and you see a Discord bot database here. Now, if you see test, that means that you need to go into your config.json and add /Discord bot or whatever you want your database name to be. So going back here, we see Discord bot is our database, and that's how we have different collections. We just have one, obviously. So we can click on welcome channels, and then we see this object right here, and this has our guild ID as the actual primary key or the unique ID here. And then we have a channel ID, which is the channel we typed in, and then the actual text. However, you notice that there's the setWelcome right here. We want to get rid of that. We can go back to Discord, and we want to actually change the content here. So here I'm going to say let text equals content. Now that we have this, we can actually say text is text, but with ES6, we don't have to repeat ourselves. If we just get rid of this, it'll understand what you mean. So now we have the actual content. And what I want to do here is I want to split this on each space. So if we have !set welcome hello world, this will then become an array that'll say set welcome hello and then world. And the reason why I want to do this is this allows us to remove the first element, but also allows us to check the length. We want to actually complain to the user if they just enter set welcome with no message. So to do this, we can create a constant called split. So this equal to text.split with a space. We could then say if split length is less than 2, channel.send, please provide a welcome message. And then we can return here. Now, if that did work, we want to also remove the first index. So we can now say split.shift, and then we want to actually join back all of the elements of the array back into a string. And we can do that by saying text equals split.join with a space here. Now we can save this and we can restart. I'm going to go in and I'm going to hover over this, and you see a trash icon here. We actually need to delete this, and I'll explain why in a few seconds. But if we try our command again, with setWelcome hello world, we can then go back and refresh with this right button right here. And we see hello world, but we do not see the command. So that did work. Now what happens if I try this again? SetWelcome test. We actually get an error, and that's because we're trying to insert a document that has a primary key that's already being used. So what we need to do is we need to insert this document if it doesn't exist, but if it does exist, we need to update that document. And Mongoose makes that really simple. So we can actually copy this object right here and cut it, and then we can delete this entire line, and we're going to say await welcome schema.find1 and update. We're going to have 3 objects as parameters. The first one will be the primary key or different types of identifiers to be able to find the object. In this case, we want to only update _ID, which is guild.id. So this is the primary key. Now the second argument is going to be the actual document to save. And so we can paste in the object that we have, and we are including this right here again, even though it's right here. In case this is the first time this document has been inserted, we want to also include that. However, this will be used whenever we're trying to update the document. Now, the last thing is going to be some settings, and we need to say upsert is true. This is a combination of insert and update. And so this functionality right here will essentially say, if the document exists, then update it, otherwise insert it. We can now save this and we can restart our bot. We can then say set welcome testing, and we get a warning here, but we can ignore that. Now we see hello world, but if we refresh, we then see testing. And so this works. So now we want to actually listen for whenever someone joins the server. And how I'm going to do this is I'm going to create an actual listener, but I'm also going to create a command to simulate a join. The reason for this is I don't want to wait for someone to join to be able to test out this functionality. So if I create a function here called onJoin, and we're going to have a member, I can then add some functionality in here. However, I'm going to create a command. We're going to listen from the client, and then we're going to say sim join for simulate a join, and then we're going to have a message. Now what I can say is onJoin and pass in message.member. I also want to listen for actual joins. So I can say client.on guild member add, and then we get a member here. We can then call onJoin and pass in our member. So now all the functionality can go inside this function, and it'll work the same exact way when I run the command or whenever someone actually joins the server. Now, if this is a command you actually implement in a live bot, you might want to do an authentication check to make sure they're an administrator or something like that. However, I'm going to delete this once I'm done with this video, so I'm not going to worry about that. So now in onJoin, we want to get the message and we want to actually send that. So to do this, we have to load it from the database. However, we don't want to load it from the database every single time someone joins any server that your bot is in. Eventually, as your bot grows, or if your bot is inside of very large Discord servers, that might lag your bot, and it's going to become a less optimal experience for the servers that are using your bot. So to fix this, we essentially want to say, okay, someone joined. Is that information, such as the channel ID and the actual text, is that information inside of our memory? Do we know what it is? No, we don't? Okay, then we're going to load that from the database, store that in our own memory, and then use it. But if we do know about it, therefore it's already in memory, then we're just going to use it. And so we only technically need to load from the database once each time our bot is restarted. So to do this, we can scroll up here and we're going to create a constant. This will be called cache, and this is going to be an object. Now, how this is going to be set up will be the guild ID will be the primary key, and then the value will be an array, which will hold the channel ID and the text. This is actually fairly simple to set up. If we scroll down, we can actually store this inside the memory right there. So let's say the bot starts up, the owner runs the command, and then someone joins. It'll never actually load it from the database because there's no need. So as a basic example, we can say cache index of guild.id equals an array. The first property here is going to be the channel ID, so channel.id, and the second property is going to be the actual text, which is text. And so this way it's stored inside of our local cache and we don't need to fetch it from the database every single time. However, let's say our bot restarts and this is now missing. We can't just use whatever's inside cache because it doesn't exist. So whenever someone joins, we need to first see if it's inside of our cache. And if it's not, we're going to load it. So the first thing we need is access to our guild. So we can destructure that from the member object. Now we can create a variable called data. Now I'm using let here for a reason. And we're going to set this equal to cache index of guild.id. We can now say if not data, we then want to load it from the database. So we need to create a new database connection with await Mongo, .then, and mongoose as our connection. Now we're using await, so this function here has to be asynchronous. Now inside of here, like we did above, we need to try finally, say mongoose.connection.close, and then here is where we want to provide our logic. We can say constant result equals await welcome schema.find1. We're going to pass in an object here. This is going to have underscore ID be the guild.id. So this is going to go and fetch in that one specific object. Now that result is going to be stored inside of our result variable. And now we can say hash index of guild.id equals an array. And this is going to be the channel ID, so result.channel ID. And then the second property will be the actual text, so result.text. Now we want to save our actual data object here. So we can say cache.guild.id equals data equals this, and this will assign the value for both of these equal to this array here. So the last thing I want to do is inside this if statement, I want to console log, and I want to say fetching from database. And this will help us actually visualize whenever we're fetching from the database. Now, after this if statement, we want to go ahead and actually send that message to the channel. So we can get the channel, so constant channel equals guild.channels.cache.get and pass in data index 1. Here we can pass in data index 0. However, this isn't very descriptive, and so I want to create actual variables for this. So constant channel ID equals data index 0. And then we want the actual text. So constant text equals data index 1. And then here we can pass in the channel ID. And then we have the actual text there already. And so here we can say channel.send text. Now, if we save this, we can then restart our bot. We get an error because this has to be asynchronous because we have await inside. So if we save this, we can restart our bot again. Now, looking in Mongo, we see the text is just testing. And so if we go in here and we run !simjoin to simulate a join, it'll say testing. However, we see fetching from database in the console. If I were to simulate another join, it does not say that, because we already stored the text of testing inside of our local memory. Now, if I were to do !setWelcome, welcome to the server, please read rules and info, and then I simulate a join, it also has the correct text, but it does not say fetching from database. The reason for that is whenever we actually are saving this to the database, it updates it locally right here. So if we were to restart our server, it would still work the same exact way, because even though it's not locally stored there, we're going to fetch it right here. Going into Mongo, we can refresh, and we see welcome to the server, please read, and then whatever syntax Discord uses to display the actual channel. Now the very last step we have is what if the user, or the server owner rather, wants to actually tag the user. So to do this, we can tell the server owner a specific syntax. They can say less than, @ greater than, and then this syntax will be actually replaced with the tag that will actually mention the user. And so we can say text.replace, less than, @ greater than, and then the actual tag. So here we can do this and then pass in the member.id. This is the standard way to tag someone. However, this has one small problem, which is that the server owner cannot mention the person twice. The second time they use less than, @ greater than, it is then going to just literally be that text. We can fix this problem by changing this into a regular expression. To do that, instead of quotes, we just use / and a G here, and this is going to replace this text throughout the entire string, and not just the first instance where it would have otherwise. So we can save this, and if we restart, we see the client is ready. I can run setWelcome, welcome to the server, and then the text we have here with less than, @ greater than, and then check out rules and info. So if I do this and I say simulate join, it'll now tag me and it'll say rules and info. And so this is how you're going to create something that'll work between multiple servers. If a separate server install my bots and actually run these commands, and they set a different message, like let's say literally just hello world, whenever someone joins, it'll say hello world in that channel, but mine will still say the same here. And like I previously mentioned, this same concept can be applied to any other type of feature that you want to be per server. Thanks for watching this Discord.js tutorial. If you want to learn more about Discord.js, consider clicking on the playlist you see on your screen now. If you need help, feel free to leave a comment or ask in the Worn Off Keys Discord, which can be found in the video description.